Hi guys, I hope you're all good. So I've actually had to split this video into two parts. First part is obviously the bit you're watching now. We're talking about sustainable property and the future of property and how as property investors we can be more sustainable. And the second part is going to be a Q&A with Edward, who is a mortgage broker. So he's going to be answering all your questions about deposits, bad credit, things like that. That video will be out on Thursday, so make sure you stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all good. So I'm joined today by Edward, who is a mortgage broker.
Hello.
So welcome to the channel, Edward.
Thank you.
So tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Sure, so I'm a bit of a finance geek.
Yeah.
And I've worked for mortgage lenders. I worked for a mortgage lender during the 2007 crash. And I quite liked it, strangely. And I've worked in different areas. I've worked on an eco property development, and I worked for an investment bank, and now I'm a mortgage broker primarily.
Okay.
And I also sort of deal with development finance, which is loans for building blocks of flats. So you get a bit of money for the purchase, and you'll get a bit of money for the build cost on top.
Okay. And how long have you been in this?
I've been a broker now for 2.5 years.
Okay.
But I've been in finance for 13 years.
Wow.
So I've come from, as I say, a bit of a technical background. So I'm bringing a few angles to the table that are probably a bit unusual for a broker.
Yeah. And you're starting a new business. What's it called?
So it's called Uplift Finance.
Okay.
We've been going, I say we, I mean me, has been going for about 9 months now.
Okay, yeah. And why is it called Uplift?
Well, uplift in finance, the word uplift can be used to describe sort of an increase in value, like planning uplift, or an increase in fees. But there's also sort of a well-being element to it, which is, if you Google the definition of uplift, you'll see it's sort of it's a bit woo, but a sort of a spiritual uplift, an uplift in your sense of self. So I wanted to start a business that does actually help people, and makes a good amount of money from that, but goes home and feels like, okay, yeah, we've actually done a good job here.
Yeah, definitely.
From Wolverhampton originally, and I started off in a call centre in Wolverhampton for a lender that existed back then called Adeus.
Right, okay.
Which was one of the naughty lenders that didn't help the financial crash of 2007.
Right, okay.
And I got a good promotion then when I was 18, and I was actually setting the interest rates of buy-to-let mortgages. So as I say, I'm a bit of a kind of bit eggheady. Yeah. And it's what I like. I'm not very fun in the pub. That gave me my start, and then after the crash in 2007, I worked in Birmingham for a while for Deutsche Bank, and I worked in London as well, and I've been in Brighton on the eco development. And really, it's taken me probably 10 years to find out what it is I want to do, which is this. Yeah. It's all this. There's a bit of disparate experience, but there's a common theme, which is trying to profit from doing a good job, which is an old idea, really. Yeah. And that's been applied through property, and it's nice because property is important. It's people's homes, and it's we've all felt the effect of having financial arrangements that are working against us. Yeah. We've all been through that, but if we can create the opposite for people, that'd be a really good thing. Yeah. So that's what we've gone into business to do.
I love it. So tell us a bit more about the eco projects that you did.
Yeah, okay, so that was me. I've started a business because I want to do something good, and I started to think about what does that actually mean in 2020, and I found out that buildings are 40% of carbon emissions. At the same time as finding that out, there's all these new construction methods of modular construction, which are houses that are built inside a factory, put on the back of a lorry and driven to the site, and literally craned a floor at a time into place. So those two things kind of came together. So I thought, well, I can satisfy both of those conditions at once. So I'm now specialising in dealing with modular home. Okay. And they tend to go up quicker. They're around about the same price, and they happen to be a lot of them are carbon neutral.
Yeah. Did modular homes used to be more expensive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very recent, until maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, it was in the modular was in the realm of, that's nice if you've got the money to do it.
Right. Okay.
It's just, I'd say literally in the past 6 months, the cost has just come down. There's more manufacturers opening literally month by month in the UK. So now it's getting into the realm of being a no-brainer.
Right,
it's like, well, you can build traditional and take 12 months, or you can build modular and take 7.
Yeah, okay.
Because it used to be called prefab. That was the old word that was thrown about a bit. And they stopped using the word prefab because so many people had bad experiences with bad manufacturers, or it would be the old kind of really concrete post-war 1950s housing.
Yeah.
So they've started using the word modular now to draw a line between those two.
Right, okay.
Have you ever seen a modular house?
I think I have, yeah. They're kind of just like flat looking. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, well, they are a bit flat looking. I mean, they're often quite modern and minimalist.
Yeah.
Which isn't everybody's thing. I mean, I like it a lot. But they tend to be a bit more arty, I'd say, because they're starting with a blank slate. And there's generally a lot of clean lines and high ceilings and big white doors and things like that. The manufacturing allows them to be a bit more creative with it. I think you said you haven't seen the Huff House, have you?
No, never seen it.
So I'll give you a link. This is a classic example. There was a Grand Designs episode where these Huff House is made by a German manufacturer, and this couple ordered a modular house from Germany. They sent their best guys over, and they had the whole thing up and watertight in a week.
Wow, no way.
And no dealing with, all these different suppliers, no dealing with all these different deliveries. It's, here's a truck, here's the parts to your house, let's put it together.
Yeah.
And it can be taken to the point where it's already wired and plumbed,
Wow.
So that's why I think it's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, the future.
Yeah. Well, it's, we're not too far in age, and most of our friends struggle to even to rent, to be honest, at the moment. And I can't see a better way of solving that problem than having houses come off a conveyor belt in a factory.
Yeah.
It's just, where do you put them now?
Yeah.
So here's a cool example. In London at the moment, there's a thing called airspace development.
Right, okay.
Which is taking a roof and putting modular, some kind of, either like a little self-contained 2-bed flat just on top of the roof, like a freestanding thing, or literally building, putting a whole other floor or two on top.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, you can't see that it's modular.
Right, okay. Interesting.
So it's stuff like, it opens up all these different areas of creativity, and it's also much, much better for the environment.
Yeah. So in terms of financing for modular housing, is it something that you can get like a mortgage on?
You actually can.
Okay.
People think you can't. I did a mortgage here in Birmingham for a friend of mine in a modular home, actually about 1.5 miles away from where we're sat now.
No way.
I can show. I might be able to show you. I'll give him a bell.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, you can. 6 months ago, it's tricky, but it's just turning now. So and that was a high street bank. There are lenders who aren't now have non-standard construction products that will deal with the slightly more exotic end of modular, but yeah, it's changed.
Okay.
A year ago, not really. A year ago, you couldn't really, but they've started calling it now modern methods of construction.
Right. Okay.
Whereas before, if you did this a year ago, 2 years ago, the value would say, oh, it's non-standard construction. We don't like that.
Yeah.
So again, they've changed the language to try and create a class of buildings that they're happy dealing with.
And do you think that modular housing is something that is profitable for property investors?
I think it's incredibly profitable, and I don't think people have realised how profitable it is yet.
Yeah.
because the build cost has traditionally been a bit more than standard construction brick build.
Yeah.
It's now pretty close to being the same. But if you think you're getting a property it doesn't need to be plastered, doesn't need to have all these different deliveries to the site, you're also cutting out all that risk of people not turning up or workmen doing a bad job on certain elements.
Yeah.
Plus, let's say it's 30-40% quicker to build it. So that might be the difference between you doing one project in the year or two projects.
Yeah.
So instead of making a 20% margin over the year, you're making 40%.
Yeah, because it's just all done quicker.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also a risk. It's like, if you've got a project that's taken a year, you've got to think, okay, what are the odds that there's a recession in this year?
Yeah.
The odds of there being a recession in 6 months are lower than the odds in 12.
Yeah.
So there's all these angles that I don't think people have properly thought through yet, to be honest. Yeah. But as it grows, it will start to grow into understanding the benefits of it as an investment.
Yeah. So what other ways, as property investors, can we be more sustainable?
Well, I think a good way to be sustainable is there's the obvious things to keep your carbon footprint lower. We're all going to have to deal with that over the next 20 years. Also, there is a bit of a chance that a government sooner or later will implement a carbon tax or some kind of subsidy for eco-friendly building, and if that happens, you want to be on the right side of that.
Yeah.
In terms of sustainability, I think it's about thinking of what are your outputs, what waste is coming out of that property development, what's coming out of so you're thinking about how much electricity is it drawing and using, how much of that is coming from dirty sources, can you cut out some of that use or all of that use, could you collect rainwater and use it for your toilets, or could you filter it and drink it, which you can actually do. It sounds a bit hippie though, doesn't it?
Very hippie.
Just stood there with your cup. But it's actually, a lot of this stuff, it's actually not as complicated as you'd think.
Yeah.
And it always, most of the time, makes financial sense. It's not the done thing.
Yeah, it's not what people are used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Mum are definitely looking at ways that we can be more sustainable. I was kind of thinking through, so if we need to furnish a property, trying to buy from a sustainable company.
Got you.
But I feel like...
Have you looked at the prices of those?
Quite expensive. Apart from H&M, I think they do an eco range, but I just don't think that it is still that sustainable.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, that's the problem with, I think, a lot of sustainable products, as it's been previously, is you have to pay more to get them.
Yeah.
Modular eco houses, it's just switching now, whereas it's going to be the same price.
Yeah.
When you hit that point when it's like, okay, well, it's A or B, and actually eco is going to be the same price, so why not? It becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But that's what you need, because otherwise you shouldn't be punished for being ethical.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to pay more so you can be good.
Yeah.
We should reward the things we want to do more of, so actually you should probably pay less.
Yeah.
For
sure.
So I mean, it's interesting you've said that. That's a good sort of example.
Yeah.
Even down to little things like wastewater. Like when you wash your hands, there's nitrates in the soap, and plants and the environment. Do you remember doing the nitrogen cycle in school?
Yeah.
I can remember doing the diagram, and it's a circle, and that's it. That's what I can remember. But planning departments are now being pretty careful on how many, because when you wash your hands and you sort of soaps and washing powders, it leaves nitrates in the wastewater. The local water systems have to filter them out, and they can only filter out so much. And this is directly affects how many houses you can build, because that's one of, all right, so many people live in here, this is what the system can handle.
Right, okay.
So if you had, say, a filter or some kind of eco solution to that, all right, that might be the difference between building 100 and 110 houses. So there's a little example of how this stuff, it's not charity, it's not a giveaway, it's really good business.
Yeah.
It's just new, that's it.
In terms of like planning permission, are planning departments usually like in favour of modular housing over, say, bricks and mortar?
You know, they like the ethic, they like the eco.
Yeah.
You struggle with, yes, but it doesn't look like the house next door.
Right, okay.
You do get that a bit. It depends on the area and how hungry they are for that kind of building.
Right, okay.
I worked on a development personally near on the south coast, and the town we were looking at didn't have anything like that, and they were really keen because they hadn't had anything like that in that area. Other areas might be a bit more traditional and say, well, it doesn't look much like bricks, and this is a traditional area and we need it to look like bricks. However, you can have a modular house that fits in with the area. Yeah. I mean, it might not, it might not have a thatched roof. Yeah. That's going to be hard. But you can have a normal looking modular house. Yeah. You know? So that's a waffly answer.
Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
So for modular housing, is the construction itself risky at all?
All right. So when I worked for a mortgage lender in 2007, on my lunch breaks and sometimes during my working hours, I'd look at some of these on Google, and they were a bit, naff.
Yeah.
Technology's come on. So there are big reputable manufacturing firms that are being invested in by companies like Legal and General, and their buildings are absolutely solid and will be stood up for a few hundred years.
Yeah.
I'd stick with the reputable manufacturers. There are smaller names coming up now because it's a new market, and some of those manufacturers will not succeed. Some of those will turn out to be not as good as we thought. But I think they're strong. Generally, it's being precision engineered in a factory, largely by machine. So it's generally going to be a lot more reliable than bricks and mortar and old timber frame that's 300 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
So what are some of the stigmas against modular housing?
I tell you what is a stereotype. There's a general feeling of the unknown. Like, there's a general fear that, we don't know about this, we haven't done it. Maybe some random thing is going to happen that I didn't expect.
Right.
But actually, there's I think it's a 1,200 home site, modular site, about 1.5 miles away from where we're sat at the moment.
Yeah.
There's more and more examples of this.
Yeah.
And it's been done in Europe for decades now. So just because we're a bit behind the curve in this country doesn't mean it's a secret. It's just we don't know, we're not familiar with it.
Yeah. But
it's not a risk of the unknown. It's not what could happen. It's, no, you can actually have a look and say, all right, here's the risk and this is what it is. So for example, banks like a development finance bank might be worried about what happens if it gets damaged in transit. You know, they build the house, it's getting driven up from Newcastle or something, and the driver has a few beers the night before and crashes his truck, and they've lost,
half the house.
Yeah, exactly, and they've and they've lost, £1 million or something. That risk is probably not that high.
Yeah.
It's going to happen sooner or later, but you can lightly insure against that. I think for a long time, modular was a bit unreliable. There was an attitude that you couldn't rely on the manufacturing types. It might maybe have a lifespan of 30 or 40 years if you get lucky, and it's not entirely unfounded. That it's the sort of thing you go, okay, I'm going to pay cash for this, and I'll get to live somewhere, but it's not a long-term investment.
Yeah.
Times have changed now. The quality is fantastic, and I think they've got longer lifespans than traditional houses.
Yeah.
So that's one stigma that made sense 5 years ago, but doesn't make sense now.
Yeah.
Because you go to Europe and like look at what they've got. It's fantastic, particularly Germany. So that's one. I think the other stigma is probably it's a nice idea to be eco, but I don't want to spend 20% more. You know, I don't want to be poor in order to be good.
Yeah.
I think you can be good and be rich.
Yeah.
And the cost of these things is now pretty close or almost the same to traditional build, and they're going up 30-40% quicker. So it's getting into that territory that, yes, it's a bit new, but sooner or later it's going to be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You'll be at the point where most people will be thinking, why aren't I building this?
Yeah.
Everybody I speak to a lot of people who work on building sites. I spoke to a health and safety guy who's a friend of a family member yesterday over dinner, and he'd seen it on sites. Builders have seen these components getting craned in, thinking this is good, it just goes up and we haven't got to do all this plumbing or wiring.
Yeah.
So like, here's an example. You can get a bathroom pre-made, a whole bathroom.
Yeah. That's
a box with a sink and a whole lot in it, and just crane it in, bathroom pod. So if you're doing a refurb, you haven't got to worry about it, because you'll know, bathroom, that's one of your most painful, annoying areas.
Yeah. Same
thing as the kitchen, so you can have a kitchen pre-made, craned in its place.
And it's just all done.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I actually love it.
Do you live in a modular house?
No. No, I don't. I might do soon.
Yeah.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But I've got to see how this business goes first.
Yeah.
There's some plans. There's some plans.
So for those who don't know, what is development finance?
Development finance is a short-term product for building or refurbing houses, and you get a portion for the purchase, and you can get up to 100% of your build costs. So when you've done refurbs, you've probably used your own money for the build cost, I imagine.
Yeah.
So with development finance, you need your deposit for the purchase, but actually your build cost, the bank will give you the build cost.
Yeah.
And they do that because they say, all right, look, you've got a house, you're going to chop it up into 3 flats, it's going to be worth £200,000 more. That's called the gross development value, what it will be worth in the end. And they go, okay, well we can see your experience, you see you've got a good plan. Yeah. So you end up actually lending more than the property's worth now.
Yeah.
It's a product that was traditionally only available for very experienced developers and large sites. Now we can do first-time developers, and we can do minimum loan I can get at the moment is 100,000.
Right. Okay. I didn't know you could do first-time developers.
You actually can. You actually can. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And if you call up a broker and ask, they might say no,
yeah.
You can't. But they say no because it's not easy, and they might not want to go to the effort.
Yeah.
But if you have a good team around you, you have, say, you know, if they're not confident, they'll say, okay, well, look, who's the builder? Have you got a good project manager? You know, you can get, there's ways of making them feel safe.
And how hard is it to get development finance for modular housing?
It's harder. I mean, development finance is tricky anyway. You know, I won't say it's easy because it's not. Modular houses are harder for a few reasons. Firstly, they're new and a bit scary to a bank. Banks like what they know. Secondly, there are some specific risks with modular building.
Yeah.
So, if let's say I'm going to build an eco house and you're a manufacturer,
yeah.
I'm a developer, and I say, okay, I want 5 houses off you, and you say, okay, that's great. I need to go and chop down a load of trees to start building these houses.
Yeah.
Can you give me a deposit of £500,000 to go and do this? And then you say, okay, great, but I've got to do that with my own money. Problem is the lender, the development finance lender, will only really want to pay for the modular build once it arrives on the site.
Right, okay.
The reason is they have a charge, a legal charge on that site.
Right, okay.
If you go bust, if the manufacturer goes bust halfway through building it, how do they get the money back?
Yeah.
You know? So at the moment, that's one of the big problems, is the developer actually has to put his money, give his personal money to the builder to get the build started.
Okay.
But there may be a solution that I'm working on at the moment.
So is this a new product that you're working on?
It's a product that is being used for building planes and cruise ships and other forms of international trade.
Right, okay.
It's also being used for property in Europe, but it's not being used here.
Right.
So there's all these problems. It feels new and risky, but actually, if you look into it a bit, there's examples of it happening already.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you are ordering, you know, a cruise ship, that's I don't know how much a cruise ship costs.
Oh, I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I'm not that I'm privileged, but I'm not that privileged. Yeah, it's those. They're the same set of risks, really.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of mortgages and modular housing, what's it like?
Better than it was a year ago.
Okay.
In that you can do it now, whereas a year ago you couldn't really.
Right, okay.
There are now high street banks like Halifax and Santander who are lending on some modular homes.
Right, no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it surprises me that high street banks are doing it as well. I thought it would be more the specialists.
There are specialists for it.
Yeah.
It depends on the site itself, the manufacturer. You know, there's a site nearby here, which I've mentioned a couple of times, that I did a mortgage with a high street bank on. And it helped because it was a big, reputable site.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. All the valuers know it. No problem. We know this is all good.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you're building one or two houses, you might need to get a bit more specialist.
Yeah.
But there's another lender I know who's probably 1% higher interest rate, but has a non-standard construction product, which is a modular product, really.
Right. No way.
So I can probably get it for high street rates.
Yeah.
But your worst case scenario is alright, you pay 1% more.
Cool. So it's definitely on the rise.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
This is